Jamie Stokes from Royal LePage here. Today's video I'm going to do is on the great housing crash of 2022. Yes, I said it. There is a housing crash. We're in the midst of it. RBC put out an article today saying that home sales in Toronto are down 47%. So if you look at statistics, I don't like statistics because they're done so many different ways, but I can tell you houses are dropping by the hundreds of thousands. I know builder fees are up in Toronto, and that's causing some issues. Condos are down big time. Right across the board, we're seeing all kinds of sales slumps happening. There's not that much on the market. It's not terrible. I mean, there's not enough housing in Canada to begin with, but due to what's going on around the world and inflation and interest rates and things like that, we've had four interest rate hikes, three or four, this year totaling 2.5%, which is pretty significant. I've said in past videos that the older realtors are saying, well, we went through that in the 80s. That's cool. You went through that in the 80s where incomes were, $60,000 a year, or let's say $30,000 a year, and homes were maybe $100,000. So going up 2.5% back then, you could afford it much better than you can now. So people are pretty tapped out. We've done mortgage stress tests, but mortgage stress tests they don't take into account the upgrades and things that are going on right now with interest rates, the hikes and things like that. They don't take that into consideration. So we're definitely in the midst of a housing correction, and we're going to see things continue to fall. That's my personal opinion. There's other sources that are saying the same thing. I don't follow, and I say this often, I don't follow the rest of what the realtors discuss. Maybe that's not a good idea, but I just feel that due to world issues right now, there's so much going on. Like, for example, different countries, Middle East, they're having issues with food and water. Mexico is down with water. The U.S. is down with water. We've had issues with global food supplies in the past 2 years. We've had probably a good 30 major, absolutely major, some of the largest food distribution and processing centers in North America burned down to the ground. Two, if you can believe this, two of them had planes fly into them. Like, how crazy is that? What's the statistics on something like that? The chances of that happening? I mean, planes going down is a pretty rare occurrence considering how many flights go up. But for two to crash into food distribution centers, that's pretty gnarly. Another thing, just the war that's going on in Ukraine, financial instability around the world with oil. They're talking about, we've got these BRICS countries, and they're discussing not using the US dollar for oil anymore. They're talking about gold standards and things like that. China, Evergrande, they've had their issues the past while. They defaulted on their payments and things, and China is having such an issue right now with real estate, and real estate in China is absolutely huge. They build entire cities based on real estate that aren't even occupied. So all of these things taken into account, yes, they're on the other side of the world, but these things are all linked financially. So there's going to be huge impacts on things. War is another thing. Russia and Ukraine going at war. We've got China and Taiwan that are going to go out of the States, is kind of stoking the fire with everybody. NATO's up in there. They're talking about adding new members, and it's, we have a global catastrophe going on right now, and realtors I don't think any of them are really paying attention to this, but this stuff is all going to have a serious impact. Food prices are going up. We've got inflation. They're saying it's 6 or 7%, maybe 8%. But let me tell you, the rents have never been higher. So that's a load of junk anyways. They're not taking into consideration all of the costs that are going up. Your utility bills, they've gone up by $50 a month, at least each one of them. Water, hydro, gas, whatever. And then, winter coming, we've got food shortages. Winter coming, it's going to be the same kind of deal. We don't have the fuels to heat a lot of places. It's there's going to be catastrophic events happening this winter between food and fuel. I know certain parts of Europe aren't going to be able to heat their homes this winter. I'm curious as to see how that unfolds. But our own housing market here, they're calling for a historic correction. That's the term that they're using. I would call it a housing crash. I know people who don't own homes have been hoping and praying for this for years to come. Canada was ranked among, I think, the second in the world for overpriced housing, where it shouldn't be what it actually sells for. So that's a serious issue, and we're getting things corrected now. If you bought your home years ago, you're pretty safe. Real estate, for the most part, is a pretty safe investment. Depends on what you pay for it, where you buy. But I know even some other magazines, some rural magazines that are fairly popular, they've said that even cottages have really taken a hit. So it's not just condos, it's not just detached, it's not townhouses, it's across the board. Everything is changing at a very rapid pace. So I think we haven't seen the bottom of things yet. A lot of realtors are saying, well, things will be back to normal in the fall. And I've had people ask me the same thing. What do you think is going to happen in the fall? My prediction, and this might sound a little bit crazy. I might sound like a conspiracy theorist, but my prediction is that things are going to keep declining. We've seen it in the past in the US and in other countries, and we're in for a serious housing awakening here. We don't have enough housing or affordable housing for people here in Canada, especially in the GTA. I know there's a lot of lower income people that are being left out of things. When it comes to, say, Ontario Works or ODSP, things like that, people are really struggling. They haven't gotten raises. And there are groups that are talking about getting the government to match the inflation rate when it comes to rentals and things like that, because typically lower income folks can't afford to buy. They don't qualify. They don't have the credit or the income to be able to afford to have their own home. I mean, this is the Canadian dream here, to own your own home, but lower income people, due to health or whatever situation that they're in that qualifies them for that, they're not able to get their own properties, and they're not able to afford their own places. You look at people working at your regular jobs in Canada. When I look at people's incomes, they're either down here, like way down here, or they're like way up here. There's not much of an in between, and we've talked about this for years, about how the middle class in Canada is being wiped out. Well, it's pretty much happened. I mean, I see incomes of, less than 50, typically like $30,000-$40,000 a year, or you're making like over $100,000 a year, which isn't, despite making over $100,000 a year, that's not well off in Canada anymore. That's just being able to make ends meet kind of thing. So the housing stuff is in my opinion, is going to continue to fall, because we have so much global instability right now. It is across the globe. I don't care what country you look at. Nobody's doing overly well. So this will have an impact. We're looking at monetary restructuring, all kinds of things when it comes to fuels, oil, things like that. BRICS countries, that's another thing. They're discussing using oil, but paying for it in gold and things like that. And I know years ago, Muammar Gaddafi from Libya, they were a huge exporter of oil, and it was kind of interesting because he went to several world meetings and he said that he was no longer going to accept U.S. dollars for oil, and he was only going to accept gold as the gold standard for oil for trade and payment. And shortly after that, he went to, I think, 2 or 3 different world meetings and said this. And shortly after that, I guess the United States needed to liberate Libya from Muammar Gaddafi. So that's kind of the thing that happened there. So I'm curious as to see what's going to happen. There's lots going on around the world. Food shortages. There are fuel crisis. There's global riots going on right now, and the mainstream media isn't covering this stuff, but it's all going to affect everything from, I'm talking food to housing to, the way everybody lives. A lot of our products in Canada and, globally really, are exported from China and imported into our countries. So we like cheap cheap supplies. We don't make a good chunk of the population doesn't make very good income. So we're looking at buying these cheap supplies that are more affordable to us. But if China goes to war and, with the United States or something like that, or the West or NATO, we'll say, what's going to happen to all these cheap supplies that are coming in here, daily essentials that we need that we won't be able to get? That's been a discussion as well. So the housing market is definitely going to, in my opinion, and I'm going to be the outcast here most likely to say this, but is going to continue to drop for a while. Maybe I think the rate at which it drops is going to slow down. I mean, the housing market could pick up again tomorrow, but there's just so much instability and uncertainty in the world right now that it is currently and will continue as things escalate around the globe to impact our housing market. Um, Food shortages are another thing. They're not. They kind of are related because I'm talking about global issues and not just housing, but food shortages. I mean, in the U.S., the largest pork processing plant was shut down, and I talked already about all the major food distribution centers being burned down to the ground. So the largest pork processor in the United States has shut down. It was owned by a Chinese gentleman, and I guess he just decided to close the doors and fire everybody. They came in, and that was it. Just no notice, nothing, done. So we have pork. We're going to have pork issues now. Because of droughts around the globe, we have issues with farmers being able to feed their livestock. So beef, watch and see. We're going to have a huge influx of beef coming. The auctions for cattle have never been higher because farmers simply cannot afford to feed their cattle anymore. So pigs, pork, beef, chicken, that's another thing. How many millions or hundreds of millions of chicken have been culled the past year because of this bird flu. So that was another thing. And they weren't just going to large farms and distribution centers to cull off these flocks. Um, there was a bunch of people in the U.S. who, and I mean, it happened in Ontario as well, where the government was coming in and ordering all of these chickens killed and turkeys as well. Turkeys was another thing. And so we've got our chicken is going to be in low supply. It seems kind of strange in my opinion. So we've got food insecurity with chicken, beef, pork. These things are all going to have an impact. And I'm not just going to say on the housing market, but daily living. So the prices of things are going to go up, continue to go up. Wages are going to remain to be stagnant, and housing is going to remain for a lot of people unaffordable, but it's going to be coming down. We've called it for years. There needs to be a housing correction. Being a realtor, maybe that sounds funny coming from me because apparently the public thinks that we're greedy and we love our commissions, which isn't the case. I talk to people about that all the time. My main focus is not my commissions. Yeah, I need to eat and feed my kids and put a roof over my head, but I only discuss selling your house if it's in your best interest. If the timing's not right, I've had clients call me back. Go and have a conversation with them, do a listing presentation for them to tell me that they're looking to retire in a few years or whatever. And that wasn't my original thought. Excuse me. That wasn't my original thought. I thought they were, more likely to list soon, but, held out patience, and I don't harass people to sell their houses, which may, it may cost me deals, but I don't feel that, harassing people to sell their houses looks very good on me. It makes me look, greedy. So I'm not, commission isn't my main goal. Dealing with people when they're financially ready and emotionally ready and all of that to sell their home, that's what's in their best interest. So if you ever have a listing presentation with me, I'll discuss that. I'm very open with things. It needs to make financial sense to you to sell your house at the time that you do. But the housing market, man, is it going down fast. So there are some people celebrating it, but there's a lot of people that are concerned. Some people need to sell, and I've talked about this in videos in the past. where people, the market's changing, so people want to hold on to real estate for a little while, which is not a bad idea. Some people have life circumstances where they need to sell. And if you are finding yourself in one of these circumstances, despite being a realtor and saying this, things are going to get worse. So I don't think it's in your best interest to wait longer to sell unless you're going to wait out like a year or a couple of years. That's my take on it. I don't feel things are going to bounce back like they were anytime soon. I think just because of what's going on around the globe with currencies, with war, all of these different things, they do have an impact on what happens here. With products coming, the monetary system, fuels, diesel, oil, gas, all of these different things, they're having an effect. So I would say if you're going to sell and you need to sell soon, I would say hurry up and do so. Naturally, you don't have to call me to sell your house. I mean, everybody knows 20 realtors, so we're definitely overpopulated for realtors in the GTA. But at the same time, don't hold out too long. If you need to sell in the very near future, I would say sell ASAP because prices are dropping by the hundreds of thousands, and we're looking at another mortgage rate increase coming up here. So we're in August, early August now, and I don't know this month or next month. By next month, 100%, we're going to see another, probably a full basis point. So another 1% increase on things just because inflation and whatnot is so high right now. And the housing market, it's pretty bad right now. I don't want to sound all doom and gloom. If you bought your house several years ago, you're still going to cash out and make good money. So I don't know. Some people might even sell their homes now, try to ride it out, because I've seen this in the past many times. They'll sell their home while the market's good. They'll rent for a year and then they'll come back and buy, which personally I don't recommend, just because your financial position may change in a year. You could lose your job, any health issues, anything can happen where your income changes and the money that you had from selling your last house, you may not have quite as much. You may blow through some of that in the next year or whatever. So I recommend buying and selling, or selling and buying very close to each other if you can do that. Don't wait out the market. Rents, there's rents are high. They've never been higher than what they are now. So there's a lot of people not making enough money to even afford rent, so they're obviously not going to be buying anything anytime soon. But watch the housing market, watch the banks, CIBC, Royal Bank, Scotia, whoever TD, whatever bank you follow. Watch the Bank of Canada and watch CMHC and see what they have to say on the housing market and what's going to happen. Naturally, with all these food shortages and food issues, like, we're not really seeing too much of it crazy right now. But can you imagine if these organizations came out and said that the housing market's going to drop 80%? Like, I don't think it's going to drop 80%, of course, but can you imagine the panic if they said, like, we're in for a serious housing correction, which they can only say so much without creating panic, right? So there's been enough articles, enough banks, enough institutions have come out and said, like, Canada is going through a serious housing correction right now, and they can only say it certain ways where it's not going to create a panic or create more problems, just like with food shortages and other things like that. I urge you to take some time and kind of research into these subjects yourself, food shortages between different things and other issues that are going around in the world, water riots in Mexico, Lake Mead, and other drought-stricken areas. Mexico, the U.S. is really suffering. We get a lot of food from there. The war in Ukraine, the grain has finally apparently come out. It's just after Russia bombed it, the port there. So it's finally being shipped. But in the Middle East, Egypt, Iran, these different countries, some of them have rolled out digital food rationing systems. So that's pretty crazy, and that may be something that we're looking at in the future here. But Egypt, for example, I've said this in a past video as well. Egypt imports 80% of their food. It's just cheaper to import, and in a lot of these countries, breads are huge. In India, um, Egypt, things like that. They've got their different breads that they eat pretty much with every meal. So if Ukraine's not putting out new wheat, it's pretty much the breadbasket of the world. Canada was ranked up there. We got stuff going on in the Netherlands, but if there's no wheat coming out, we're gonna have more riots going around. I urge you take a look on YouTube or Google food riots around the world. What's going on? And this stuff is going to have an impact on our housing market. Just like China's housing market, they stopped paying their mortgages in China, if you can believe that, because of the stuff that's going on there. They're just not paying their mortgages. They're boycotting things. So watch and see. Pay very close attention to the signs that are coming out about the housing correction that's coming here. It's already started. It's underway. Like I said, Royal Bank said, I think it was today or yesterday, that Toronto home sales are down 47%. Like I always say in my videos, statistics can be manipulated or changed based on how they do the statistics, but that's a pretty scary number. We've had them go up that in the past couple of years, but things are crashing. They're really crashing. And for investors, I mean, it's not such a bad thing for investors if you've got multiple rental properties, because you still have tenants in there paying mortgages, and like I said, rents have never been higher. So you're kind of in a safe zone there. But for your average Canadian, this could be a real issue. And for those of us, I shouldn't say us because I haven't bought lately, excuse me, but for those that did buy while the market was high, you're getting your interest rates going up. And on top of that, now you're getting a housing crash. And yeah, I'm not going to call it a correction. I'm going to call it a crash because at the rate that things are falling. A correction could be just a little bit or a lot of it, but the rate at which housing prices are falling is pretty hardcore. So we're going to be looking at some more problems, especially if you bought in the past couple of years. What you paid for your house, it's not worth that anymore, and that I've said in a past video, that's part of the reason why I slowed down my business a little bit. I look at signs of things that are coming in the future, and I knew that the market could not sustain itself. Yeah, I could have made a killing on commissions probably, but who is everybody going to blame? And I have a conscience, I don't want to go out and have people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking or over what the house is actually worth. At the time, it may have, the bank may have lent you money on that at a lower interest rate. But now when it's going to come time to renew your mortgage, and now that the housing market is crashing, you owe more on your house than it's going to worth. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue paying that? Or are you going to walk away from your house? Is the bank going to repossess it? What are we looking at here? So that's my thoughts on the housing crash that's happening right now. And as I said, it's going to continue. I want everyone that sees this to go and research some of this stuff for yourself. See what articles the banks are putting out, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the Bank of Canada, all of these things. Watch the interest rates continue to climb. Watch house prices continue to go down to the point where it causes pure chaos. The housing market's pretty level, but there's going to be a lot of people coming into some problems here, even with buying now. If the housing prices continue to crash like they are, if you buy now and you have a closing in 60 or 90 days, your house is going to be worth $100,000 or $200,000 less. So what are you going to do? Are you going to close on that and overpay for your house? Are you going to negotiate for those terms? Are you going to close quick? What are you going to do? Leave some comments, some thoughts here. I know there's going to be some realtors eventually that watch this. I don't have very many subscribers, so I would love if you would subscribe to my videos. And if you want me to discuss a topic, feel free to leave a comment, and I can definitely do a video for any subject that you like that's real estate related. I'm not going to do prepping videos or anything like that about how you should run out and go and hoard food or anything like that. But the housing market's changing, and you need to pay attention because this affects everybody. It's not just one thing; it's kind of everything combined at the same time. And I've already discussed why and how. So leave me a thought and tell me what you think. I'm not trying to fear monger, but the information is out there. They're not just going to put out that the housing market is crashing and you need to do this or do that, because people are they're in trouble now because they've overpaid for their houses. Their mortgage rates are going up, and they're probably not going to be able to afford it, or they're going to not close on their house. We saw this a few years ago, and it's just going to get worse now. So watch and see, pay attention. Tell me what you think. If you're looking to buy or sell, or you need some real estate information, you want to discuss anything, you want me to do a video, you can give me a call on my cell phone, 289-927-5991, or you can drop me a comment below. Click to subscribe. That way I can continue putting out more videos, and you guys can leave comments on what you want to hear about, and I'll be happy to do that. See you in the next video. Jamie Stokes.